ChatEIC is designed to write EIC Accelerator Step 1 proposals, so this is a very simple version of creating the first draft of a proposal. When you open it, this is how it looks like, and this is where you're going to do all of the work, or where the AI is going to do all of the work. So as you can see on the top here, you can see how many credits you have available. You can buy the credits on the front page. And then below that, you can see the modules. The modules are basically the sections of the proposal. So everything is broken down to make sure that every single section actually fits to what the template is looking for. So what you don't want to have is obviously an AI that is trying to write an entire proposal of 12 pages, and then you're going to get some weird vague summary. You want to have very specifically written sections so everything fits to what the EIC is looking for. Below that, you can see now it's all in green, but usually it should be in gray if you're starting out. It's in green for me because I already generated a lot of modules. But you will see it's blue if something is being generated at the moment, it's gray if you haven't generated it yet, and it's green if it's already generated. And you can see that all of these numbers here, they correspond to the modules. And don't worry about the missing ones. These are just the ones you need for step 1, and the other ones are for step 2. This is everything you need for step 1, and you can see at the end you have AB is abstract, AC is the acronym, and TI is the title. So it literally generates everything you need for the written proposal. And then on the left, you can see where you can add your input. You can also upload a file, and on the right, this is where you're going to get the AI output. And then of course the submit button once you want to create the first module. Below that, you can see all of your past responses. Since I've been testing this extensively, you can obviously see there's a lot here, but this is where you have all of the past responses. You can see acronym and abstract, different sections. I'm going to go through it with actual examples so you can see how it looks like. You can also show the input. There's a button at the bottom, but if you show the input too, it's going to be very crowded. Also at the bottom, you have a delete all button. If you click that, it's going to anonymize all the data, which I've already done a few times. So if you click that button, there's going to be a question, hey, are you sure you want to delete? And if you do that, it's literally going to delete everything on the server for your account. So everything you have put in and everything you've gotten out, it's going to be gone. So once you do that, obviously everything is going to be gone. So make sure to back everything up before you do that. You can also show the inputs. Now it's anonymized, but you can see at the later ones, it's going to be showing everything you've input. If you input a file, it's going to display all the content. So of course it's hidden by default. Then yeah, this is pretty much it. And then the only other button I should explain is the download button in the top right. If you click this button, it's going to stop processing the AI. So make sure that you're done with everything, and it's going to download a Word file. And this Word file is going to be the final proposal, which I'm going to show. So just keep in mind the button at the top right, it's the download for the Word document. And this blue menu here, I'm going to explain later as well. So you have like some overviews if you want to go through the modules one by one. And the video is this video explanation, so you know exactly how to use ChatEIC. But first, let's go through the types of use cases. So generally speaking, there are 3 ways you can use ChatEIC. Option number 1, which is my recommendation and my favorite, is that you're going to fill out a short questionnaire, which is like a very short template, and you're going to attach a file that contains a little more tech info, so more information about your technology, and then you can just generate the entire proposal at once. That is use case number 1. Use case number 2 is, if you want to be lazy, you can just upload a pitch deck and you can just generate an entire proposal in a few minutes. You don't have to do anything, you just have to click a button. Use case number 3, if you want to be a little more careful, you can go through every single module and generate it one by one, answering the questions and just using it as a structured way of creating a proposal. So let's start with the first use case. So what I did is I created a very short template, which is more of a questionnaire. The template button here is going to open it. You can copy it into your Google Drive or just download it as a Word document. You can fill it in, where you can fill out your company data, and this is going to give the AI a screenshot of the entire project. So what you're seeing here is just 1.5 pages of content, but it really covers, I want to say, 80% of what you need to know in order to write a proposal. Talks about the company, where was it founded. There's no narrative, no text. All you do is list things. You list the people on your board or whatever advisors you have. You list the cap table, the ownership, the company name, where it was founded, your current TRL. I recommend to always start at TRL 6. Then the type of funding you want to go with. It's just going to list everything. Your USPs, how much do you save, how much is the high efficiency, whatever numbers you use, revenue projections, the patents, whatever you have. And if there's anything you can't answer, you can also just delete it. So for example, you say, hey, we have no patents, you can just delete that. And the same goes for partners if you have no partners, although most companies do. But it's usually a good idea to just look at my red examples and replace them with your actual data. So this is a really, really good help just to give a snapshot. It should be pretty quick to fill this out if you know your company well. And then you have a very nice, it's almost like a snapshot of your company, just a really quick summary of what it's about. And as an example, I filled it out for a fake company. This is just an example project. So all I did is I asked the AI to come up with examples that are just completely fictional. So for example, dark sense technology, all I gave it is I want to have a technology that is for dark factories. So these are completely fully automated factories where they turn off the light because they don't need light if they're not people. You save some money. So this is dark sense technologies. They have very special quantum dot sensors using innovative semiconductors and AI. It's just a mix of buzzwords. So this is what I gave it. It came up with the advisory board, the employees, the next hires. It just used my template and filled it out. It filled out explicit numbers for everything. This was generated in just a minute. So this is still 1.5 pages of my little questionnaire. And this is now the first example we're going to use. So what you can do now is you just copy that questionnaire and you can use it using the all modules option, which means that it's going to generate all modules at once. So you're not going one by one. It literally goes through all the modules one by one, and at the end you have your final proposal. So you can do that, but what I recommend is to fill this out, but then to also attach a little of tech information. So this obviously doesn't tell you a lot about the technology, but the technology is very important. So what you want to have is you want to have this snapshot which gives you very explicit numbers and very explicit details, but you also want to have a little more detail on the technology. So what I did is, again, I asked the AI to expand on this fake technology. Of course, I can't show you actual companies, even though I have hundreds of pitch decks, but it would be in bad taste to put this on YouTube, even if people send it to me without any NDA. So this is a completely made up technology. So these are 20 pages generated by AI about this fictional dark factory quantum dot semiconductor AI technology. I'm sure it makes sense, but of course it's completely made up. This is just for example purposes. So it mentions a lot of things. So these are all the tech components. It broke it down, what is included there. So now what I do is I take my summary, which is just a snapshot, and I take this text summary as well. And what I do is I put the summary into the text box and I attach this text summary below. So now I have these two aspects that give you a lot of detail about the project. I have my summary that gives you all the numbers, and I have the tech description in the bottom so the AI can work with something. And now all I do is I click all modules and I click submit, and it's going to generate everything. So this takes less than 10 minutes and it's going to generate an entire proposal. So I'm going to fast forward, and at the end you can see that once it's done, it actually shows you the entire results and it generated everything. This is everything you need. And at the end you click the download button at the top right, and then you get your proposal as a Word document. So let's look at the file. So this is the finished proposal. The first thing that's obviously important is that you have your acronym. It made it up, Smart Efficiency, and it also made up a title. So here you have already two things you need for the proposal. There's going to be placeholders, for example XX. You have to enter your company and your country. So I left it like this as static content, but everything else is AI generated. And then the proposal has to be 12 pages, and you can see it's exactly 12 pages. But in reality, I set it in a way where it's always going to be just about 11 pages because you want to have enough space to add some images as well. So what you can see here at the end, there's the abstract. This is actually not part of the proposal. This is what you're going to add during the submission. But I also wanted to have the abstract created so you don't have to write it. So this obviously you're going to delete here, but you're just going to put into the submission when you submit. You see without it, we had less than 11 pages. So barely 11 pages, which is perfect. From there, all you really have to do is you add some footnotes, you add some hyperlinks to obviously make it look better researched, and have some references for your, let's say, market reports and so on. But without that, the only other thing you have to add is some images. And also there's a table for the team, which is also static content. So for example, here, there's just an example. You enter all your team members, but everything else already added in. So you have the commitment, gender, and if this person person is a founder or not. You add the competences. So this is also what you have to do. But that's it. You have a full proposal. So how's the quality? Obviously, this is a completely made up project. This company doesn't exist. This technology doesn't exist. But you can see is that it wrote everything exactly how I would instruct a person to write. So my template is already more detailed than what you get from the EIC, because obviously I've been doing this for a while. I know how these things have to be written. So you can see that everything is broken down into these subsections, which have very specific length depending on their importance. So there are some sections that are not that important, so you keep them short, and some sections you try to have a little bit longer. So you can see mission and vision. It always talks about what the mission is. So for example, our mission is to drive scientific advancements in manufacturing efficiency through the integration of advanced sensor technologies and predictive analytics. And then blah, blah, blah. And then it says our vision is to transform the European manufacturing landscape by enabling smart factories that leverage real-time data and AI-driven insights. So this is actually very good because it literally addresses what this section is about, and it takes the information. And what's really important here is, of course, the input you give it so that it understands what it has to write about, but the prompts themselves for the AI on how exactly to write this section. This obviously is a very easy section, but you can see that all of the sections have a very specific structure. So for example, this one talks about the founding story and where the company comes from, if it is a spin-off and so on. Let's go to one that's usually a little difficult. So let's see how it handled that. So I haven't actually read it yet, so let's see how it did. So this one is usually a little more difficult. It's like the problem description. A lot of companies don't do this one well because they just don't realize how impact and a groundbreaking innovation is judged by the evaluators. But it usually comes down to what the problem is you're addressing. So all it had as information is the technology. It didn't really have anything else. There was no big narrative. There was no proposal that we gave it. We just gave it info on the company, technology, customers, partners, and a detailed technology attachment. But there wasn't really anything that tells it, hey, this is the big problem that we're solving, or this is like the huge whatever climate change. So what it did is it zoomed out and it looked at the manufacturing sector and it tried to describe, okay, what is here a big problem? And it talks about, all right, losses of billions of euros in Europe alone, manufacturing plants can, and then it talks about the downsides. It talks about how important the entire industry is to the GDP. And also it gives you a lot of numbers how important manufacturing is. 18% of the EU's GDP, 2.4 trillion. And once you have either a reference or a better number, you can just hyperlink it, add a footnote, and makes it look well researched. And then you do this through your document. Of course, you have to fact check things because it can only use the data you give it. And if you don't give it data, it's going to use its own data, or maybe it's going to add placeholders. It also talks about safety. It talks about European Agency for Safety and Health. So of course, you have to look for references for these things. You can also change things. Then it talks about the industry problem. Manufacturing plants today are grappling with significant inefficiencies. It talks about the annual losses. It is always instructed to try to quantify as much as possible, so it always tries to add numbers. Then this one obviously is tricky, the customer groups. It's always good to summarize the customers, so you can see automotive, it mentioned BMW and audio, so this is part of the first document. So these are all things I gave it. So in this 1.5 overview, these things were actually mentioned, and then it tries to group them together. So it has automotive manufacturers, electronics producers, large-scale manufacturing plants, and it mentions names for each of these. So this is exactly how I would recommend someone to do it. So you have very distinct customer groups. And then the high-level solution, this is usually something I like to add, and it does it very well. I can already see, because what I'm here looking for is that it really explains to me the USPs in a very simple sentence. Just give me what is it that you do, so what is your actual technology, and then what is the benefit. That's like a really nice snapshot to introduce this section. So this kind of unique selling point, but also explaining the innovation a little bit. Okay, so without going through the entire proposal, maybe we look at one more section. Technology detail, this is obviously a nice one, and this is also a difficult one for the AI to write because it is a longer section, so I actually intentionally made it longer, but it's also difficult if it doesn't get enough data. In our case, it had enough data because I attached the tech information, which I obviously recommend people do. So you can see it describes different components, so how exactly it is set up. It tries to use technical terms and quantify, and here fourth component. So up to 7 components, just mentioned how this entire technology works. Of course, it is made up, so we don't need to go into a lot of detail. So if this is a real technology, it's going to be a little more distinct. This one combines a lot of different things. So it's going to talk about 5G, Ethernet, Internet of Things. So there's a lot of things there. But you can see it doesn't talk about anything else. It just talks about the tech. It just tried to break it down and explain it in simple terms. So this is definitely fine. And then the market, this is actually very well. So I gave it TAM, SAM, SOM estimations, which I recommend you do, but it's going to try to do this estimation anyway. As you can see in other proposals where I don't give my summary. So it's going to have the total addressable market and then the SAM and the SOM. It's going to use a bottom-up analysis for the SOM. So this is all good stuff. So this is a really great basis for a proposal. From there, you can add details, you can fact check, but once you have that, a lot of things you don't need to change. UN SDGs, you don't need to change that. This is already good because this is a section that just has to be there. Job creation, it writes everything the way I would recommend it. So this really has very high quality when it comes to the structuring and knowing what each section needs to have. At the end, you just have to fact check the numbers. How many people do you want to hire? If you didn't give it the numbers, it's going to make them up, so you have to just change them. But it's going to basically tell you how it has to look like. And an interesting use case is also, if you already wrote your step 1 proposal and you're about to submit, to just take that step 1 proposal and use it as the info and just see what ChatEIC is going to come up with. Because very often it's going to create sections that are probably better than what you have or things that were missing. I've seen that a lot, that people have very short step 1 proposals that don't have a lot of detail, don't have a lot of content. So just put it in, see what it comes up with. And then obviously need for EIC support. There are a lot of good things here. It exactly writes it the way you have to write it. Okay, so there's a lot of good stuff. Let's go to the next use case. So the next use case is going to be if you want to be a little lazy and all you're going to do is you're going to upload a pitch deck. All you do is upload a pitch deck. It's not much to go on because a pitch deck usually doesn't give much detail on the technology at all. So one of my favorite examples for this use case is Ginkgo Bioworks. This is an old pitch deck from 2021, but I like this company. It's a US company. They do synthetic biology. They now do a lot of things and they're struggling a little bit, but it's a very interesting deep tech use case with 4 PhD founders. But I'm using this pitch deck because it contains quite a bit of content. It talks about all of these different applications and what exactly the product is. Of course, it's going to be difficult to understand for the AI because it's not a coherent text. A lot of it is going to be snippets, there's quotes. So let's see what it's going to come up with a very difficult case, which is just a pitch deck that has nothing to do with the EIC Accelerator. It's not even European. So let's see what type of proposal we get. So all we do is we upload the file, we don't add any text, and then we click all modules, and then we just generate. And again, in just a few minutes, we're going to have a full proposal. So let's see what we got. So we got a nice acronym, Biological Solutions. We got a nice title. The title it came up with is Revolutionary Cell Programming, Technologies Transforming Industries, Enhancing Sustainability, and Empowering Global Bioinnovation for a Better Future. That's a very nice title, so that tells you a lot. Okay, so founding story: founded in 2014 in Boston, Massachusetts. Ginkgo Bioworks emerged as a pioneering spin-off from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. Our founding team led by, okay, this is all correct, Tom Knights. Okay, so this is all correct stuff. I took it from the deck. And then the mission, our mission is to make biology easier to engineer, enabling the development of innovative solutions across various industries. We focus on scientific and technical discoveries that address critical global challenges, such as health, sustainability, and environmental resilience. Our vision is to transform industries by creating a leading horizontal platform for cell programming that drives efficiency and innovation. And of course, it talks about Europe because this is what you have to do, because this is how I instructed it. But again, this is a very difficult use case. This is a US company. There's nothing to do with the EIC. I didn't even say how much grant I want. This has nothing to do. So this is just to show the versatility of ChatEIC. Is it able to take the most difficult use case, which is just a pitch deck, has nothing to do with the EIC, and make a good proposal? And from there, if you give detailed examples, as in use case 1, it's going to be obviously way better. But here, you can already see it's still very good. Actually, let's look at the length of the document. So we got 11 pages minus this one. So it's like 10.5 or a little more than 10.5 pages, which is great because for the rest, you can add some more stuff. To fill the 12 pages, you have to add the table for the team members. Where is it? You have to fill the table for the team members and you just add a lot of images and then you have 12 pages, which is perfect. So this is a great length. So this company has had nothing to do with the EIC. So let's see how much funding it actually wants. We are requesting blended finance. Okay, it made the decision that it's blended finance. We are requesting blended finance under the EIC Accelerator, comprising a grant of 2 million and equity investment from the EIC fund, amounting to 4 million. Good number. To reach TL8, we anticipate securing private co-investments that will be 1.5 or twofold of the EIC fund equity. That's a good number. So this would be, in this case, whatever it is. So this would be up to 8 million in co-funding. So this is all correct. So we have 70% funding rate for the grant. The remaining 30% allocated through early revenues from ongoing projects, bridge financing rounds, and potential loans. So this is exactly how I would write it. So this is all correct. And then need for EIC. This is something I don't worry about. This is going to be pretty much perfect because the instructions for this sections are very, very specific. Let's look at a section that would be very difficult. Let's go to the EU goals. So obviously this is a US company. So let's see how it actually fits to EU goals. This is actually very interesting. Our technology and company are aligned with EU policies and agendas, particularly focusing on innovation, sustainability, and digital transformation. Key EU frameworks such as the European Green Deal, Digital Europe Program, Horizon Europe. Okay, this is good mentions. The STEP, Strategic Technologies for Europe platform, also a very good mention. DeepTech innovations, benefit to EU citizens. That's all pretty great. Competitors, that is obviously tricky because I think there was no information on competitors in the pitch deck. Okay, so let's see what it did with the competitor analysis. Okay, our primary competitors include companies such as Amgen, and it mentions each company and says why it's bad. So it basically talks about the company, says, hey, so this is why the company doesn't have a good solution. And then it talks about the next company and it explains why this company is bad compared to your innovation. And then it gives you very detailed pricing analysis. And then it talks about a lot of things that I actually would always suggest people to add to their competitor analysis. But this is very decent. There's no red flag there. It literally just talks about things. You could argue that you could add more numbers. So again, once you have the finished proposal, you can see where you want to add more details. And also, this is all details that wasn't included. So this was a pitch deck from a US company that didn't even contain competitor information, but it's already decent. So if you actually add competitor info, then you're going to have obviously a way better result. And the commercial strategy, it does a good structure for the EIC Accelerator project. So we don't need to go through that. And the market analysis, again, this time it again does TAM, SAM, and SOM. This was definitely not part of the pitch deck, but it managed to figure it out. 28 billion for the TAM, 3 billion for the SAM, and then did a bottom-up calculation for the SOM, which is exactly how I recommended. And it came up with a number 200 million, which is great as a revenue potential. So this is very good. And you can see it also adds placeholders. For the IP, it actually added placeholders because it didn't want to make up a number. This is the XX here. Okay, so this is very good. Like, this is a very good result. We got 10.5 to 11 pages. We got everything we need. Now you just add some images, you fill the table, and then maybe add more details, some footnotes, some hyperlinks, and that's it. You're good to go. So for the last use case, so this is if you want to go bit by bit. So what you can do is you can go through the modules and then you can fill in content using this little explainer slide. So what I have is for every module that you click, if you go individual, if you go module 1 or module 2 and so on, if you click these, then you're going to have some information on how exactly you should write them. It's a slide. It's going to give you a general sense. So based on that, you can see, okay, this is the info I need. And I recommend to also attach a file. Just attach a file with general information so the AI always has a knowledge base to go on. And with that attached file, you just add some bullet points at the top. So you just add the names or whatever, and then you see what it comes up with, and then you get your nice text, and then you can move on to the next one. The file that you have is always going to stay uploaded if you don't reload the page. So you can just add new text to the input field for the next module. You can see what exactly it is you have to do, and then you're good to go. And you can also use that approach to redo certain modules. So for example, let's see you say, I actually don't like how the mission and vision came out. Obviously you can manually change it, or you can also say, I'm going back to ChatEIC. I'm just going to click mission and vision. I'm going to change it. And what's actually happening on the platform, if you download a document, it's always going to take the latest module. If you generate the entire proposal from start to finish, but then you go back and you say, hey, generate a new title, or generate a new module 2, generate a new module 44, whatever it is. If you do that, it's going to replace module 44, and it's going to, when you download the doc, have the new module 44 in that position. Of course, you have full version control because at the bottom you have all of the outputs. So this is not going to change. Everything you get as input and output, it's always going to be saved until you delete it. So you never need to worry that you're losing anything. Even if the document only takes the latest version, you always have all the versions at the bottom.